It's the Ross Tucker Football Podcast.
Oh, yeah, it is. But it's not just any Ross Tucker Football Podcast. It is a Power Rankings Tuesday, except we did Power Rankings yesterday because of travel schedules. So we've got Bill Barnwell from ESPN, really bright guy. I think we do this every year now where I have Bill come on and tell me the teams he's higher on than other people, the teams he's lower on than other people. So looking forward to you getting a chance to hear what Bill's thinking this year. We are daily now, Monday through Friday, always presented, of course, by DraftKings. You can tell everybody you know in 30 minutes or less, you will know everything going on in the National Football League, and you'll get it from my perspective as a former player, which I think you will very much enjoy. We will have a new Spread the Word winner, sponsor confirmation email winner, and YouTube shout out winner. I also would highly recommend that you check out at Ross Tucker Pod on Twitter, because I think at Ross Tucker Pod might be giving away a Madden code today. If you want a free Madden code, follow at Ross Tucker Pod on Twitter and or Instagram. I love doing the YouTube shout outs, youtube.com/Ross Tucker NFL. Maybe there's some way we can give away a Madden on YouTube so we can get some more YouTube subscribers. I know there are a lot of people that are signing up to be patrons now, patreon.com/RT Media, primarily probably because they want the even money bets. People like the even money bets. They want to see it in black and white, so they don't have to, while they're driving or working out, they have to write down all the bets that Steve Fezzik and I have. Today, we will go over all of our Week 1 NFL bets on the Even Money Podcast. Really looking forward to that. Always a blast, of course. So we have some new patrons, patreon.com/RT Media on the private Tuckheads Slack channel, like David Lyons. David, welcome to the family. You will enjoy being a part of the crew. Absolutely love communicating on pretty much a daily basis. I'm on that Slack channel commenting with other people. I also love hearing from Bill Barnwell every year, because you know what? He always has teams he's higher on than others, lower on than others. And you know what? He's usually pretty right. I mean, he's got a very, very, very good track record. It's Bill Barnwell time. It's Big Show time.
The Big Show.
As promised, we are joined by my buddy Bill Barnwell from ESPN, the Bill Barnwell Show, which is excellent. I was actually on it a few weeks back. You should definitely check it out and check him out on social media at Bill Barnwell. I think, Bill, this has become almost an annual thing now where I have you on the show in July or August to hear the teams that you are higher on or lower on, because your batting average is really, really good on these. I forget. I've seen the stat one time, but I don't know that you're 100% or 1,000%, but you're close.
I'll try. There are some years I get things wrong. Like I think the year the Browns went from 1-15 to 0-16, I said they were going to improve, which you figure 1-15, you're probably going to get that right most of the time. But the Browns, well, they found a way to make an exception. But yeah, I mean, I think, it's funny. Like we have different teams. We look at different teams, different analyses, different stuff pops up. But the same stuff matters year after year. Like we'll come up with reasons for why they shouldn't matter, why the numbers don't matter, why the story doesn't matter. But it makes sense. And at the end of the year, we look back and we say, well, again, not 100% of the time, but 80, 85, 90% of the time, the stuff that mattered in the past usually matters now as well.
Well, and what are some of those things, Bill?
Yeah, so you're looking at how teams perform in close games, because I know we want to believe that teams need to know how to win, that they need to win those close ones. And hey, every year it happens. You'll have a team that goes 6-1, 7-0 in those close games. And even if they're by a great quarterback, even if it's a veteran team, even if it's a team on the coming up, historically, they don't do that again the following year. Usually they go 500 in those games. Maybe they go worse than 500 in those games. Take a big step backwards. Seattle was that team last year where the Seahawks, even though they lost Russell Wilson, were incredible in close games 2 prior years. And even with Russell Wilson in the lineup, much worse in those games last season. Things like fumble recovery rate, things like defensive touchdowns, where like the Cowboys, for example, last year had 9 defensive touchdowns, 3 more than anybody else in football. Go through history, look at teams who have that many return touchdowns, whether it's interceptions, fumbles, even kick and punt returns. The year after, they don't get that many, and their record usually declines because of it. Things like the average starting field position. How many times did you have a lead heading into the fourth quarter and lose? The Chargers were the classic example of that, where they would have like 5 or 6 leads in a year in the fourth quarter and then lose them. And it eventually did bounce back, and they had a couple of really good years because they kind of fixed that. That stuff just does not happen year after year. So I think, it can be a little bit opaque. It can be kind of some things you don't really see at first glance, but over time it tells us, yeah, those don't typically stick year after year after year.
Well, I'll give you another one that I'm sure you've done an analysis on, which I think is, to your point, injuries.
Yeah,
Injuries.
100%.
A team has unusual health the one year, that almost never is the case the next year.
100%.
And the opposite's true. A team that's just like the Ravens a year ago,
Exactly.
ravaged by injury, doesn't usually happen the next year. Although I will say there are some teams recently that have had back-to-back years of bad luck, or back-to-back years where they're even moving on from strength coaches or trainers because they're like, what's going on? Because they know it's an outlier to have bad injury luck multiple years in a row. You just don't see very many that have multiple good injury luck, multiple years in a row.
Well, you know how it is, right? Talk to a fan about the Ravens. You're going to say, hey, what happened last year? Why did the Ravens finish under 500? It was the injuries. And that makes sense. That's true. You never, ever, Ross, hear a fan say, why were you guys good last year? Well, we were really healthy. We didn't get hurt at all last year. We were good all season. You don't think about that as a fan, but it matters. That stuff does come into play. And whether it's, we talk about the offensive line a lot. If you can get your offensive line to play together for 16, 17 games a year, that's a huge competitive advantage. And your defense, if you can get your secondary, your 4 or 5 starters in the secondary together all season, that plays such a dramatic difference. And even if you have guys go down early in the year, like the Ravens last year, it wasn't just losing guys during the season. It was losing, they had 3 guys go down in the course of a week at practice. They had Marcus Peters, J.K. Dobbins, they had Gus Edwards. It was like Adam Schefter. Every time I tweeted about the Ravens, I felt like I was hiding my eyes, like something horrible was going to happen. Like that's just, it's a freak thing. And yes, if it happens 2 or 3 years in a row, there's probably something wrong. But usually that's only a 1-year thing. And it's one of the reasons why you project a team like the Ravens to improve this upcoming season.
Without question. I don't know anybody that doesn't think the Ravens will be better this year, and rightfully so. And that's reflected in their season win total, which we talk about a bunch on the Even Money podcast, which is interesting because I have had over the last month or so several different sports bettors come on that show and talk about teams whose season win totals they like the over, that they think are going to be better than what the sports books think. And that's what I want to dive into with you, Bill. Just teams that you think you feel very confident will be improved from a year ago.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is stuff I focus on every year. And again, I'm not going to say I'm right all the time because I am not right all the time. And sometimes it's a question of degree, right? I thought last year the Niners were going to be better because they had been so hurt the year before. They were getting Jimmy Garoppolo back. They were very unlucky in a lot of cases last year. Did I think they were going to go within a couple plays of the Super Bowl? No, probably not. A couple of years earlier, they had the fewest interceptions in the history of football in a 16-game season. They had 2 interceptions all year. They had Jimmy Garoppolo get hurt. I said, okay, they're going to be a lot better next year. Did I think they were going to be a Super Bowl team? Absolutely not. But that's what happens. Things have to go right to have the opportunity to have, things pop your way and have maybe the Seahawks drop out to get a chance to go to the Super Bowl or come close to going to the Super Bowl. So when I bring up these teams, they might not have Super Bowl potential right now, but look at the Bengals. No one thought they were going last year, and they managed to make it to the Super Bowl. So I'll start with a team in the NFC that I like. And again, are they going to be a Super Bowl team? I don't think so, but I think they're going to be a lot better this year than they were a year ago. And that's the Detroit Lions, where, hey, I mean, think about the Lions last year. It felt like they were snake bit during the first half of that season. I mean, I think about that Ravens game, right, where they were up 2 points. It's Justin Tucker for a 66-yard field goal. and he bounces it off the upright and it goes in. Just the absolute, just heartbreaking loss. Every week it felt like Dan Campbell had to go to the podium in tears to apologize for another crushing loss for that team. But the one good thing is, hey, they were competitive with the Ravens when the Ravens still had Lamar Jackson. They were competitive with other teams in the NFL week after week, and their luck was pretty bad. I think they're going to be a lot better in close games this year. They've added a bunch of young talent to the roster over the past couple seasons. They had some guys break out last year, guys like Charles Harris or Amani Oruwariye, who were not NFL caliber players at that point. They looked like NFL caliber players under Aaron Glenn. And we know the offensive line is good. Penei Sewell was good last year when healthy. Jared Goff, not a superstar, but a competent NFL quarterback. Plenty of weapons on that team when guys are healthy. Do I think they're going to be a Super Bowl team? No. But could they be 7-10, 8-9? Could they even compete possibly for a wild card spot? I think that's absolutely within the realm of possibility for the 2022 Lions.
I don't even remember off the top of my head right now how many games they ended up winning last year. But I'd be shocked if they don't end up winning. Where they were 3-13-1 a year ago. And I'd be very surprised they don't win at least 6 games. I mean, that would really surprise me.
And, again, that's progress, right? I think we all expect them to be better, but the question is, if they're a game better? No, I'm not really thrilled about that. That's kind of disappointing. But if they're 3-4 games better, I think that tells you, hey, we're on the right track. We have, a core to work with here, and we can go out next year. Maybe they get a Jimmy Garoppolo in free agency. Maybe they go out and get someone like that where it's, a upgraded quarterback, and then they say, okay, we're going to be a playoff team this upcoming year. I think it would be nice if they won 8 games, but I think even 6-7 wins would be, sort of what you would expect given how well they played a year ago, and they were much better than their record indicated.
Speaking, Bill, of teams that only won 3 games a year ago, let's get to the Jacksonville Jaguars, which I know you and I were comparing notes, and that is the AFC team that you expect to be significantly better. And I couldn't agree more with this comment.
Yeah. I mean, just, the numbers are the numbers, and I'm a big numbers guy. I'm always going to try and bring up numbers, but at the end of the day, what matters most historically, when you look at teams that defied the numbers or teams that made leaps without the numbers really pointing towards them making a leap, is major upgrades at quarterback, major upgrades at head coach. And Ross, if you watched the Jaguars offense last year closely, first off, I'm sorry. You should get like a gift basket or something. You should get a medal for having to watch that offense closely last year. It was a disaster, but it was a disaster in a way that teams aren't really usually disasters. It reminded me a lot of like the Browns the year that they really struggled in Baker Mayfield's second season. It's just, it was guys not being in the right places. It was miscommunication on snaps. It was just blown pass protections, receivers stopping when they weren't supposed to stop, guys running the wrong length on routes, just the sort of thing that you don't have when you have a good coach. You can't make guys into superstars just by having good coaching, but you can have guys be in the right places at the right time. And that affected Trevor Lawrence. He was constantly, I know my friend Nace Tice looked this for an article for The Athletic, where it's just guys were running routes where he was expecting them to be 12 yards deep and they were 10 yards deep, and he had to adjust his passes because of it. He didn't really have an offense he could trust a year ago. And Doug Peterson, I mean, I know it didn't end well in Philadelphia, but that is a guy who was going to run a professional offense built to his team's strengths. He is a guy who is going to build an offense that is going to be well enough coached that Trevor Lawrence will be able to trust what he has in front of him. He'll know, hey, if I'm expecting a 14-yard dig on this play, that guy is going to make his cut of 14 yards. If that window's open, in my head, it's going to be open in reality. And I think for Trevor Lawrence, we know how talented he is. We know what upside he has. So to me, I think that is the kind of team where they could make a stratospheric leap just on having more around Trevor Lawrence. Now, on top of that, we talked about this on my podcast. I don't know how good the AFC South is going to be if Tennessee takes a step backwards.
It's a great point. That division is actually, I think, ripe for the picking. And the two things I would say, they obviously added a lot of talent. This offseason, they had the number 1 overall pick. They had multiple first-round picks on the defensive side of the ball. They bring in Christian Kirk, Brandon Sheriff. I mean, they did add a bunch of pieces. But the bigger thing to me is this, Bill. I don't know, and maybe this is a little bit of my, Philadelphia bias, working for the organization and also doing the pregame show. I feel like Doug Peterson's hire has kind of gone under the radar.
It
And for
has.
some reason, he wasn't as highly touted of a prospect this offseason
Mm-hmm.
as he should have been, or as a coaching candidate. I mean, you're talking about a guy that beat Bill Belichick and Tom Brady in the Super Bowl after, first of all, got to the Super Bowl and won it after
Mm-hmm.
his MVP caliber quarterback got
Mm-hmm.
hurt, and then beat Belichick and Brady. The
Yeah.
next year, he goes down again, and they're probably an Alshon Jeffrey drop away from being in the conference championship again.
Mm-hmm.
And then 2019, they were absolutely demolished by injuries. I mean,
Yeah.
the guys they had playing in December were all the guys that played in the preseason game, because I
Yeah.
called them on TV. And Peterson got them the division championship.
Yeah.
They, Wentz got hurt by Clowney in
Mm-hmm.
the playoff game, and that was kind of it
Mm-hmm.
after that. But I think Doug Peterson's a heck of a coach, and I think Urban Meyer pretty much went as close as we've seen to a coach more or less sabotaging an NFL season last year.
Yeah. I mean, the bar is real low for improving on Urban Meyer. And I think Doug Peterson is a lot higher than a typical bar for a coach. I mean, think about that team when he took that team over in Philadelphia. They had just fired Chip Kelly, and that team was not as big of a mess as the Urban Meyer Jags, but they were a mess. They had been rebuilt. They had made some questionable free agent signings. 2 years later, they win a Super Bowl with their backup quarterback. I mean, that's how quickly they turn things around. And yes, the Eagles organization deserves some credit for that. I feel like the front office, played their role for sure. But Doug Peterson is, I think, an extremely underrated coach. And again, I'm not saying that they're going to win a Super Bowl in his second season. I'm not saying that's likely to happen. But again, professional. That's what I'm thinking of here. They are going to be a professional-looking offense, and I think that's going to unlock a significant upgrade for Trevor Lawrence. I think he's going to be a Pro Bowl caliber quarterback this year based on the pieces they've added around him and just his pure level of talent combined with an actual coherent plan on offense.
Bill, let's talk teams on the other side of the equation.
Yeah.
Teams that you're not as high on, you
Mhm.
don't think will improve, you think will be worse this year.
Yep.
We can start in the NFC again.
Yeah, I mean, I think, there's a few different places we could go in the NFC, right? I mean, I think you look at teams like, maybe, the Packers, where they lost Devontae Adams. They lost some pieces. They were really good last year, but a little maybe lucky in close games. Cowboys, same thing, where it's so good on defense when it came to scoring touchdowns. The team that comes to mind for me might not be the first one that stands out. It's the Atlanta Falcons. And Ross, the Atlanta Falcons were a bad team last year. I think they were 32nd or close to 32nd for most of the year in Football Outsiders DVOA stat, which measures how efficient teams are on a play-by-play basis. They were very good in close games. For a team that had the reputation as being snake bit in close games, they were actually really good. Younghoe Koo, their kicker, was awesome last season. They won a bunch of one-score games. I think they won 7 games last year, and 6 of them were on Younghoe Koo field goals to win the game. Their only win last year by more than 7 points came against the Panthers, and that was by 8 points. So it wasn't like they were blowing teams out. Their losses were typically pretty ugly, and on top of that, they're messed up cap-wise. They had to make some significant decisions this year. They pursued Deshaun Watson, didn't work out. They had to trade Matt Ryan in the process. They replaced him with Marcus Mariota and third-round pick Desmond Ridder. They lost Russell Gage, their top receiver, to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Calvin Ridley suspended for the entire season. Foyesade Oluokun, who was a very good linebacker for them last year, goes to the Jaguars in free agency. They don't really replace him. So now looking at a team that, yes, has some young talent. AJ Terrell's great. Kyle Pitts is great. I think Drake London is going to be great. But a team that was bad last year, lucky last year, you figure average luck this upcoming season, maybe worse than average luck if things go wrong. And then you have a talent drain with their best quarterback, with their maybe second best defensive player, and one of their top offensive players. Ross, I think this team's going to be historically bad. I don't think they're going to be like a 5-win team. I'm thinking they're going to be 2-15 or 3-14. I think they're the favorites to me to have the first overall pick in the 2020 draft. And I know they're not tanking. I know if you ask Arthur Smith, he's upset at the idea that they're tanking. I just don't think they realize they're tanking in 2022.
Well, Yeah, they're going to be bad. And I think
Sure.
because of their cap situation, they need to be. I think most people think they'll be bad, but the question is just how bad. And you're right.
Yeah.
They won 7 games last year. I'd be surprised if they get to 5. I really
Yeah.
would. I think,
It's brutal.
yeah, I think it's 3 or 4. All right. Last but not least, your team in
Mhm.
the AFC.
It's not going to win me any fans in Las Vegas. I'm going to say the Raiders. And I think, again, same thing here with the Raiders, where they did win 10 games last year. And they were impressive at the end of the season. I know that they won 4 straight to finish off the year. They had that crazy game with the Chargers. And then they played the Bengals tough in the postseason. They were down early, came back, came within a score of tying that game and going to overtime. So talent is definitely there in some places. Good quarterback in Derek Carr. You had Devontae Adams, you had Chandler Jones, 2 older players, but 2 players still who can be difference makers at their best. But number one, they were lucky. They were a team that had some luck early in the season, won a couple games in overtime. Daniel Carlson, their kicker, I think had 9 kicks in the fourth quarter to take the lead, which was, I believe, an NFL record. I think that no one has had more than 6 in the past 20 years when it comes to that. And then those last 4 games, yes, they did win the final 4 games of the year to go from 6-7 to 10-7, but Chargers win was the Chargers win. Those 3 other games, 2-point win over the Browns with Nick Mullins at quarterback, their third stringer. 4-point win over the Broncos with Drew Lock, their backup at quarterback. 3-point win over the Colts with Carson Wentz hours off of the COVID list playing quarterback for them. So 3 wins over extremely compromised quarterbacks by narrow margins. To me, that's beating up on teams by narrow margins. That's usually a indicator that you're not going to be as good the following year. Of course, the AFC West super tough now, adding Russell Wilson to the Broncos. Chargers are loaded. Chiefs, I know they lost Tyreek Hill. Chiefs are still going to be there in the long run. They lose a home game because the NFC has the extra home game this year. They play a tougher schedule because they were second in the division this year. To me, I think the Raiders are a good team, and I know they added Devontae Adams, but I don't think that's enough. I think they're a 7-8 win team again in 2022.
I would just add to that, Bill. I think the jury's out on Josh McDaniels
For sure.
based on what happened in Denver. And,
Mhm.
we have a small sample size for him in Denver. It wasn't good.
Sure.
We have a small sample size for Rich Bisaccia,
Mhm.
and it kind of was good. I'm a little surprised that they didn't allow Bisaccia to get a larger sample size, is the
Me
way
too.
I would probably describe that.
And I'll tell you what, the players loved him. I mean, at the end of the day, like you can say the production was there or not there. I think they were a little lucky at the end of the year. But the players rallied behind Rich Bisaccia, at least publicly. Maybe privately they said differently, but publicly they said, we want this guy to stick around. And he did not stick around. That's a real shame. And I think the other part of this, Ross, that I'm going to mention as we finish up here is this. The Chargers, the Raiders lost, of course, a couple first round picks to off-field behavior. And excuse me, I apologize. Henry Ruggs, the other Alabama wide receiver, obviously, car crash, killed someone with DUI, terrible situation. And they couldn't have anticipated that. David Arnett, their cornerback first rounder, is a mess as a rookie. Year 2 gets cut after a very bizarre video where he's holding a gun. Obviously, 2 terrible things happening, and they couldn't anticipate that. But not only are those 2 guys gone, but they just declined the 5th-year option for their 3 first-rounders from, I think it was 2019. It was Josh Jacobs, Jonathan
Cleveland
Abram,
Farrell.
and Cleveland Farrell was the 4th overall pick.
Yeah.
Those guys are still there for this year, but they haven't lived expectations. Now they trade a 1st and 2nd round pick for Devontae Adams. That's 6 first-round picks. They're not on the roster, or they're not living up to expectations, Ross. And that's supposed to be the core of your football team. When you're 3-4 years into a draft, that's supposed to be where you are excelling. That's where the stars of your team are developing. The Raiders are a young team overall, but they don't have those guys. They're filling in those guys with guys from free agency, guys who are veterans that McDaniels knows prior. I mean, that's just not a good recipe. So to me, I think, if the Raiders look at they're on the come up, I just don't think they are, because that core of young talent that's supposed to be there just is not on this roster.
Outstanding stuff, Bill. It is every year. Really appreciate the time. Check out the Bill Barnwell Show. Check him out on social media for sure, at Bill Barnwell. Thanks so much.
Okay, thanks, Ross. Anytime.
It's interesting, Bri. We talk about this a lot with Joe Dolan because I see Joe tweet about it. People are really into F1, Formula One. Formula One drivers live life in the fast lane, both on and off the track. And Wondery's new podcast, Fast and Loose, F1, hosted by Will Arnett, is here to cover it all. From McLaren to Ferrari to Mercedes to Lewis Hamilton to Daniel Ricciardo, the world's most prestigious and fastest F1 teams challenge each other on the world stage. Pretty cool, because you've got Smartless co-host Will Arnett, joined by two-time world champion Mika Hakkinen, to reveal the high-speed twists and turns after every F1 race. So if you're like our boy on the Fantasy Feast, Joe Dolan, listen to Fast and Loose F1 on Amazon Music or wherever you get your podcasts, or listen ad-free by subscribing to Wondery Plus in the Wondery app.
Tuck's Takes.
All right, let's start today with tight end O.J. Howard, Ross. He signs with the Texans. Former Steelers tight end Jesse James signs with the Browns. Cowboys sign left tackle Jason Peters, and the Cardinals give Jalen Thompson a big extension.
So a bunch of things here. O.J. Howard was set to sign with the Bengals, changes his mind, signs with the Texans. So, the Bengals, even though O.J. Howard visited, they ended up claiming a guy on waivers, I think, a younger guy from the Patriots. So then I guess they felt like they didn't need O.J. Howard. Jesse James didn't really work out for him last year in Detroit. Not exactly sure what happened there. Jalen Thompson was a 5th-round supplemental draft pick. I mean, they didn't even have a supplemental draft this year. So that's interesting that a guy that was a supplemental draft pick has ended up being a big hit, a big winner for the Arizona Cardinals. Good for him. And then Jason Peters. Wow. I highly encourage people. Gosh, I say it too often. What would be a better way to say that, Bri, other than I highly, because you always go, I highly encourage people.
What else should you say? Just
strongly.
You don't need to just say, just say, just do it.
Just do it. I'm not even encouraging you. Check out my Twitter at Ross Tucker NFL, because I had a thread on Jason Peters from his rookie year when we were teammates that I think you would really, really enjoy. I'm quite sure I've told the story on the show multiple times before, but if you haven't heard it, I think you would probably enjoy reading it. I personally think it's interesting that he still wants to play football, and this is no knock on Jason. Everybody makes their own decisions in life. He's made $117 million just from salary and bonuses. There's other monies he's made. His pension and benefits are off the charts, having played 19 years of pro football. And you can say, well, he loves it. He loves it. Well, okay. I love football. You guys can tell I love football. Now, maybe if I was as talented as him and people kept giving me the opportunity to play, maybe I would still be playing like Jason Peters. I don't know. But I guess I always look at it with a little bit of different perspective now of, the money he's going to make this year in Dallas is not going to make a difference in his life. You wouldn't think, but a serious injury would. Even the wear and tear could. So I'll be curious to see how long he stays healthy, how he plays. The Cowboys obviously really need him. They don't know if this Tyler Smith rookie is going to be ready, and they don't want to sort of give up on the season with Tyron Smith being hurt.
Tuck's Takes.
Saints safety Marcus Maye arrested for aggravated assault with a firearm.
Felt like this happened Friday maybe or Saturday. Did not hear more about this other than this was a big free agent signee for the Saints. I mean, this was a big move that they made after losing Marcus Williams to the Ravens. And, this sounds like one of those where it gets dragged out and it doesn't affect him until next year. But I don't know that. I don't know that to be the case. It's just still another negative thing hanging over the Saints. They got the Kamara stuff. Now they got this. It's not positive. It's not a good thing. That's for sure.
Tuck's Takes.
Philadelphia Eagles claim running back Trey Sermon off waivers, and the Giants released linebacker Blake Martinez.
So Trey Sermon, had those awesome games for Ohio State and was a great player at Oklahoma, and yet never really worked out for him with the Niners. I think a lot of people were surprised by that. Martinez, I think, has been the Giants' leading tackler the last couple of years. I'm a little surprised by that move.
Tuck's Takes.
News out of Nashville. The Titans gave running back Derrick Henry a $2 million raise. Also, defensive end Harold Landry tears his ACL.
Yikes, man. He's their best edge rusher, best pass rusher by far. I think he made the Pro Bowl last year, double-digit sacks. That is bad. That is a big loss for the Titans. You know, you're losing guys like A.J. Brown and to a trade and Harold Landry. Hard to imagine the Titans being as good this year. They're a team that definitely looks poised for a step back. And Derrick Henry, I guess, he just wanted more money. And the Titans said, you know what? This guy's carried our team. If he wants $2 million more to keep him happy, give him $2 million more to keep him happy.
Tuck's Takes.
One more injury news item. It's the Eagles' left tackle Andre Dillard. He fractures his forearm at practice and had to have surgery.
I always wonder how that happens. I mean, it's hard to fracture a bone like that and to do it in practice. I don't know if he fell on it or got stepped on or just banged it against a helmet real hard, but that's not an easy thing to do, to fracture your forearm like that. And it's one of those things that's funny because, not funny, but as long as Mailata stays healthy and Lane Johnson the first 4 to 6 weeks, doesn't really matter. Now, if one of those guys gets hurt the first 4 to 6 weeks, then it's a problem. Then it's sort of a major problem because Dillard's the next guy to go in. And he played pretty well last year, had a good camp, good preseason. Shout-outs are in order. They always are. For Pizza Boy Brewing, Sporticulture, HumanHeadNYC.com, SteakhouseSports.com, Go-Bangles.com, Evergreen Economics, and MyFrontPageStory.com. We're back. Hope everybody had a great Labor Day. It's week 1 of the NFL season. You must be signed up and subscribing to all the shows. Get them all in. I'm fired up. Big game on Saturday for me. UTSA at Army. NFL Sunday. Should be a great, great week. So glad to have you guys back for another season. Anybody new? You have come to the right place. I think we're done here.
Thanks for listening to the Ross Tucker Football Podcast. Make sure to also subscribe to the Fantasy Feast, Even Money, Business of Sports, and College Draft. All available at Apple Podcasts, rosstucker.com, or wherever podcasts can be found.